What's going on YouTube? It's Biggs, bringing you another One Piece card game video. Today we're going to be talking tier lists. Before I get into that though, there's a lot of drama going on today. It's been a crazy day for One Piece Twitter. I'm not going to name names, talk about what is being talked about. I just want to say, guys, we are a wonderful community. Please be kind to each other, be respectful, understand that everybody's different. And move on. It has no effect on you personally, so just, mind your business. If you have nothing nice to say, then keep it to yourself. But if you want to be mean to me in the comments after this video, because man, Biggs, you're an idiot. You got this tier list wrong. I'd love to hear that instead. So go ahead, do that. But we're going to talk about tier list today and OP-06 with a little bit of sprinkling of OP-01 or OP-01, EB-01 in there just because I'm so hyped for that. Honestly, I'm not really excited for OP-06, but EB-01 makes it a way more interesting format in my opinion, and I really hope that it comes out sooner than I think. I haven't looked at the roadmap in a while for release schedule, so I'm not sure exactly how far after 06 comes out that we get EB-01. That said, let's hop into some things here. I posted some deck lists as I always do for you guys. I think you guys deserve to see what is successful. What are some of the big changes for decks from format to format without having to make like a long Patreon article. I do want to start working on that eventually, guys. Just understand that school is a lot of work for me. I'm also doing internship right now, so it's just been tough. But I do want to start growing the channel. It's just going to be a little while longer before we can get in there. I'm so happy we hit our 1K sub goal, but in the meantime, let's talk about tier list and deck list. So the first one's going to be Sakazuki. Obviously, this deck has been the talk of the town. It is the deck that everybody hates or loves, depending on who you are. I like winning games too, so don't get me wrong. It is pretty cool. Biggest changes from 05 to 06 is going to be this Tashigi. This Tashigi is the Nutter Butters. Just gives you extra consistency that you didn't have before, although you are pretty consistent. Most games in 05, I'd say you're going through 5 cards of your deck pretty easily. So now that we can go Searcher into Searcher pretty well, dig extra deep to find like our removal pieces, our combo piece if we need it. So we have options there. This is really good. Other than that, we obviously get Gecko Moria, which is one of the cards that I think should be banned. I know there's contention here of what is the most bannable card in Sakazuki or limited. I didn't say that in my last video, and I really wish I did, because most people just look at it as, oh, this should be banned. Understand that cards can be limited, and that would be okay too. Rebecca is one of those cards. Putting her to 1 is fine. It's the fact that you can find her multiple copies of her pretty easily is what makes this card so egregious, is because you're getting so much graveyard interaction that it's pretty nuts. And then you add Moria to the mix, and we're talking a lot of value for 8 Dawn. I know people will equate this to saying, oh, 10 drop is a balmy big card. Why shouldn't we not ban that and ban this one? It's different. The difference between 8 and 10 is pretty significant in terms of Dawn investment, especially because Moria can combo with any of your cost reduction abilities. You can find extra cost reduction abilities to hit a removal, and it's not the same. Black's biggest thing is the ability to KO and remove relatively easily, which is good. They kind of went away from the affecting your hand size, kind of, when you think about it, because I'm using cost reduction, so I'm discarding a card, quote unquote, before I get my removal effect. But they just get really efficient removal, and now they are able to interact with the graveyard in ways that no other deck can, which is always a tricky thing to balance in any game. If you look at any game that has graveyard interactions, typically there's always been a broken deck or something that needed to be banned or adjusted, etc. It is a second resource for the deck, and no other color has access to it, which is another thing that I think needs to be pointed out when we're talking about adjustment. But I'm getting too far ahead of myself on this video. But yeah, that is what pushes Sakazuki even further into viability, and in my opinion, still one of, if not the best deck in the format. Um, Quick additions I want to talk about. We get Ama no Murakumo, which is literally Lucci but an event, but it bottom decks, which is pretty nuts. Um, I don't know why they thought that was a. You know what Sakazuki needs? Yeah, I don't understand. And then I threw in Aramaki. He won a flagship recently. I thought it was just really cool. He got kind of written off really quickly as like, we don't need this. We were already playing like 1 to 2 copies of Borsalino 7 drop in '06. But this person won his flagship. And flagships over there are pretty competitive. So I thought it was worth just pointing out there. Your ratios can vary 1 to 2 copies of something here and there. There's really, in my opinion, the list is made. Is just it's superfluous. Like, you're gonna go up a copy or down a copy, add 1 copy of a card, don't add a copy of a card. The deck is still gonna do what it's gonna do. Those minute one of like, oh, this is definitely the best card to play in the, it doesn't make a difference. But if you want to feel safe, you can obviously drop Aramaki, add 2 copies of Borso, and you're looking good. Um, Pudding, though, I think is a worthy talking point. This is a Pokemon style effect. You can put all your opponent's hands into their deck and they draw a new 5. This is obviously for things like yellow that'll like, oh, I will happily take my life. Ha 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 ha. And then you're like, surprise, put that shit back. So this is really good into yellow, in my opinion, like if you want to tech for them. And then even things like Whitebeard. Whitebeard pops up every now and then. He's still going to be able to contest Sakazuki okay for the most part, depending on how your local meta shapes up or what your read on is for like a regional, how many times you think you're going to find Sakazuki. Because matchups are RNG, guys. So with that said, like, this is a really good tech card. For those 2 colors specifically, not so much the mirror match. You don't typically find yourself with a bunch of cards in hand like that. So with that said, like, if you know you're going to be fighting yellow, or if it's going to be a diverse meta, a tech pudding or 2 might not be bad. So I'm going to just throw her in there. Moving on to my favorite deck, and I wish, he wasn't the talking point of a ban, but he kind of is. I threw in some 1-ups here. These are not part of the deck. These are just things you can consider. Moria, like Sakazuki, has some interesting build points, things you can plus or minus. Rebecca, I don't think makes the cut. Personally, I just threw that in there for you guys to look at. Not a good card, just because it doesn't really go well with our Thriller Bark package, because that is his leader ability. That's his whole thing, is he's able to discard a card and bring back a Thriller Bark from the trash, 4 or less, kind of like a Dofi effect. You do go down in hand size, but that's okay. We will happily take the first 1 or 2 life. This Perona is really good into the yellow matchups, just forcing them, yeah, you can take your life, but you're going to still give me a card every time you bring her back. And they have no way to get rid of this otherwise, so you're able to just keep recycling this effect a couple of times and eat their hand away. So they're not ever really going plus on you. So this is actually one of the better cards into yellow, for my opinion. Moria, obviously, interacting with the trash. Hogback is able to bring back any of our pieces, but mostly we're playing Hogback to bring back a Moria that we accidentally trashed off of like a Sindri, brand new, etc., to just help us find that value. I threw this in there. Noel from Singapore, great player, actually had some secret sauce with this one. This is another way to just eat your opponent's hand alive as an event card, so I think it's worth talking about. And as well, Hogback is not limited to characters. He can actually bring back a negative hollow again, so you can just keep triggering discard on your opponent. I haven't tested it myself, but I will say that it is an option if you want to play with that. And then again, for the most part, pretty much the same. I will talk about Helmepo, both Sakazuki and Moria. This is another one of those starter deck staples that are probably going to shoot up if they haven't already in value, just because 1, he's hard to find, and 2, he's the a prime pickup for Moria for removal turns, as you can bring him back, give something -3 as your 2 cost rested, and then bring back a 4 cost active. That could be your Lucci, that could be Absalom. So it just helps you do removal combos pretty easily by just playing Moria and resolving a nice sizable body as well. And then you can always don this up if they leave it. So Moria's got a lot of play to it. It's definitely a high skill ceiling. Moving on to Katakuri, he is no longer just the big mom deck. He is the yellow good stuff deck. Honestly, if you're playing a good yellow card, you just stuff it in this, and it'll probably work. The ratios are hard to do. They vary from build to build. Just talk about the new stuff. Kikunojo, you guys already know how I feel about this. This card's dumb. Bringing your opponent to 3 life is pretty easy when most leaders are 4 life. Being Sakazuki, Perona, Enel, even against Moria and Katakuri mirrors, like it's not hard to just swing 7k once with your leader and then again, and then have your opponent at 3. So very, very powerful card, just free life. This one varies from build to build. Is Edward Newgate. He is very interesting. I've only seen him played in Katakuri, but he's another really just good stuff card. You can add the top card from your deck to your life cards, then look at all your life and place 1 card at the top of your deck. Place 1 card at the top of your deck and place the rest in your life. So you can literally just rearrange your life how you want it, and you resolve a 7k body. It has a 1k counter to boot, so pretty nuts. Onami, Thunderbolt with a banish ability on it and a 1k counter. Why? And then finally, Reject, another just good stuff card. KO is a 5-drop or less, which is pretty nuts. Better Jet Pistol, but without the trigger, thank God. Or make your opponent take 1 damage if they're at 1 life. So it's a very, very efficient way to end a game if they're at 1 life, and then just beat them up with all your big beaters. So again, a lot of build variety and a lot of options, but honestly, you can probably just stuff the best yellow cards in Katakuri and succeed. And most most decks have. So that's it. I'm not going to throw every deck on here, as they're mostly the same. I'm just going to talk about either decks that are very different, like we have with Sakazuki and Katakuri, and the new decks. Speaking of Enel, all right, and with Enel specifically, we have the same kind of plan. We're playing a lot of the good stuff. I didn't talk about Hiyori for Katakuri, but this just lets you stack your life. It's a 2k counter, pretty nuts. Onami, Kikunojo, Reject, which is searchable, Offshore, which is nice. Another card I'll talk about, I still like Linlin a little more than Enel. I know NA is back on 4th on that one, but I like the card better when you're going first. Also, just another way to force your opponent to possibly give you a life alongside a trap. And then EBO 1 preview. I'm saving that for the end here, but this card's nuts. Just something to look forward to for UNL players. KO anything, and then trash the top cards of your life till it becomes 1, which is really easy in NL. You're doing that anyway. So the stipulation of trashing life is probably not going to come up. And just being able to instantly KO anything is pretty nuts for 6th Dan. It's the equivalent of the blue bottom deck card that name escapes me at the moment. But it's a really powerful effect. It has a KO on trigger equal to or less than you and your opponent's total life. So it's a Yamato effect as your trigger. So pretty nutty card. Definitely look forward to being able to search this, play this, trigger this, and frustrate the hell out of your opponents because yellow's a dumb color. Moving on to, I believe the next deck is Reiju. Actually, Reiju is one of my favorite decks. I think it's amazing. I just think that it kind of just loses to the top decks a little too much. But she is a combo deck, kind of. she has this ability to like play these Power Rangers in their baby form. So like you play the little form to bring out the bigger form from the trash your hand for Don -1. That is kind of her whole thing. She's never really gonna hit her maximum Don. Actually, like this judge card's amazing, by the way. Like the turn you can resolve this, you most likely win the game, so long as you're not already losing, obviously. But this card's pretty wild. It helps you recover from like board states where your opponent was able to KO a lot of stuff or trade with your board. So this is a pretty nutty card. I like this card a lot because it'll bring back all the little versions of the Vinsmoke family, and then you'll be able to Don minus them to bring out their powered up forms, which is really nice. The deck definitely just builds itself, and it's actually really affordable card-wise. You're only playing, what, 6 SRs, and the rest are uncommon, common, and rare. So pretty good, pretty good. And then I actually think this is a mainstay of the deck. It just helps with some of your more difficult matchups. It's just the pudding tech of just being able to disrupt your opponent's hand a little bit. And then Kaya is just another really powerful 2K for you. As again, you'll be able to bring back any of the big versions from the trash. So she does have a little bit of trash interaction. That's actually why her stage effect is actually probably the best out of the different versions we've seen of this, where you discard a card, rest the stage, and then look at the top 3 for another Germa card. So being able to trash these big cards out of your hand and then find them later is really, really strong. And then they get an event searcher, which is nice as well. So Reiju, super fun deck. You can argue that she might be here. That'd be fine. I just think overall she doesn't find the same success as all the other decks above her. But still one of my favorite decks to play. She's just really fun to like figure out, sequence well, and then just do some really fun like combos, draw, which her ability is nuts. Every time you Don minus, you draw a card. It's once per turn, but still that's +1 almost every turn. And then you just balance that. Judge is a good card, but it's not a card that you have to play every game to win. So like, if the turns you can hit 8 is great. The turns where you're just playing your deck the way it's supposed to be is fine as well. Like you don't have to hit the 8 for this, but it is there. And finally, Yamato. Again, the reason why I don't place it higher, obviously it's 1-2 CSs in Japan, or the Japanese metagame, is because he finds mixed results because his hand, he's like really reliant on what he draws. Like it's extremely trigger dependent, how well you drew, because like you might not just find the cards to end the game. It's unlikely, but it is possible for you to kind of like not get there. Some versions lean into this Ohm Holy combo. It's just a way for you to put pressure after your leaders hit for double attack, which is pretty nuts. Hody Jones is busted card. Rest 2 characters, or Don, which is important to note for some weird matchups where Don matters. But you're able to get rid of their blockers and then just go for game. Attach 2 rested, swing 10k, do an Amaru play, swing 9k with lead. Like it's busted. It's nutter butters. This is the Oak TK kind of style of deck where it's just like you can win the game out of nowhere because your leader ability is so strong. Which is why I talked about in the ban list video. Like I don't think this should be the move going forward of these like leaders that just get all their value with no Don investment and they're just good to go from the get-go. Like I think that's bad for the game. But I'm gonna leave it there, and we'll talk about Perona, which is another one of my favorite leaders. But I will, still address the fact that I don't think this is good card design for our leaders going forward. Having no stipulation, just being able to use my ability, other than the fact that it's a once per turn. Wow. My ability is in check now. No, but she's really, really fun to play. Again, same issues as Yamato, very draw dependent. Like you do have some ways to dig through the deck, but it's not the most consistent, and sometimes you whiff. Sometimes you still don't find the pieces you need. Like the games you win with Perona are definitely those 10 drop chains. You can still do some pretty nutty stuff with Moria in this deck. The same draw 2 cards when you can play brand new Kuzan off of it. Uh, she has a very strong aggro matchup, being able to rest things and just KO everything with these rest effects, attack into things that are rested. So she's a fun deck. She's actually a really hard counter to Red Purple Law in that way, which is why I don't think he's here. I think he gets a lot better post EBO1, which is why I'm looking forward to it so much. But yeah, she's a fun deck. Rosinante Blocker gets to see a lot of play just because the best decks in the format are black. Yellow, has some stuff against with like the Onami triggers and all that nonsense. So yeah, having this Rosinante Blocker is pretty huge if you're playing green. So yeah, this is why Perona is pretty good, but not, in my opinion, like contender for like best deck in the format. Just really strong. I'll talk quickly about Zoro Whitebeard. They are both really strong decks. They don't really get much or play differently than we've seen them so far. But it does get a little more awkward, especially Whitebeard into yellow. Like this yellow good stuff is just really, really strong. I feel like the matchup went from like super favored Whitebeard and has consistently just become more awkward for him. Granted, Katakuri is still at the mercy of triggers. Like sometimes he will live, but for the most part, I do think that it's gone from favored to even to maybe slightly unfavored. Takata has an awkward matchup into Enel. Just by nature of this ability, it's really annoying. Yamato can be really annoying if they can resolve a really chunky double attack and just boom, your 2 life barrier is gone. So it's really rough to play Whitebeard, but he does see some success. I will say that he's not out of the game; he's just not relevant. Again, Reiju, you can argue for like here, but I don't know. I think she kind of fits in that same spot as the 2 red decks. Purple Luffy falls off pretty hard. 9-drop Kaido is still a really strong card. I just think everything else in the format just keeps getting better, and unfortunately the purple buffs kind of stop. Like he doesn't see much love after set 5, which kind of sucks. I feel like, again, some of the card design space has just kept going to black and yellow, and I don't understand why. There are colors that still need some love, which is really cool. These need more help from OP-07. Like, I know people hate Law. They're like, oh, Law was so good for so long, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. So Sakazuki. We're really talking about the same amount of sets at this point, and Law kind of just falls off. So I would like to see what OP-07 brings to the table, if it actually make a difference. I'm leaning towards no, till we see whatever ban list they got cooking up. Dofi has some really interesting build options, and I cannot wait to see how this plays. I've always wanted to play the deck, I just never thought he was good enough. As my early videos indicated, like I've never liked blue enough to play it competitively, and that always brought the ire of my chat saying that I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, Nami I think gets pretty good. I didn't add it. It does get a new tool in OP-06 in White Snake, which is a 2-cost event. Give your leader or character plus 2k for the turn, or is it plus 1k? I think it's plus 1k for the turn. So that means that your leader becomes a 6k. It becomes more awkward for you to attack into Nami leader, and you draw a card. So it's another dig effect. So that is the biggest addition to the deck, but a very notable one. I put her here in her own thing because depending on the meta in a specific time, she can be either like an amazing pick, and then other times it could just be like not worth it. Why did I bring this? So I do want to mention that, reference her. She's not gone from the meta, but she's always, RNG reliant on herself and just like what her matchups are for a day. But yeah, So moving on from there, we'll talk about the starter deck leaders. In this particular tier list, I don't have them, but I'm only going to talk about Luffy anyway. I think Sabo gets better post EBO1. Ace kind of too. There's a really strong yellow 2K counter that comes out that, again, I don't know why. Yellow probably has the most useful 2K counters, surpassing red at this point, and versatile too. So, but we'll talk about that at another day. So we'll talk about Black Yellow Luffy. This is the premier, in my opinion, like combo deck of the format. It plays very weird. You're definitely looking for your combo pieces, and I completely forgot a card. Let me go back. View card list. Can I go back? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That sucks. We'll build the deck live again. But yeah, it is the combo deck of the format. It's playing almost all of the starter deck cards for our Black Yellow Luffy deck. Split screen. There we go. So we're playing all the black or the yellow cards for the deck. You're gonna play these little guys that not search, but will let you play the 5-cost variants from your life, which sounds awkward. Like, how do I do that? Well, it's very easy to do that with Black Yellow Luffy's leader ability. You trash a card from your hand and Don ×2 on him. If you're at 0, you can add 2 5-drop cost characters from your trash to your life. So what you're looking for is to stack the Ace, the Luffy, or Sabo, but we're really looking for Black Sabo, but I'll add him later. The reason being is that these effects will not just let you play them for free, quote unquote, but you'll also be able to give your leader plus 2k till the end of your opponent's turn, so they become Whitebeard effects. And when you can trigger that 2 times, which is very easily, with certain setups, you become a 9k leader and your opponent cannot do jack squat to you, and they're forced to try and trade with board or use a lot of Don to poke at you and achieve nothing. So that is definitely the strong point of the deck, but again, it is a combo deck, so you need all your pieces to be there for you and go well. I keep forgetting to add the cards. So we're looking at something like this, in my opinion. Let's see. I wanted to have this ready for you. I'm taking a bit of time. Let's go black cards now. Sabo's a huge piece. This is the better Sabo to be searching. I've seen some variants in OP-06 Plus with the EBO1 stuff use like Suru with 2 Great Eruptions to trigger like this Sabo that trashes a life but KOs a 5-cost. It's a nice, cute tech, but mostly the Great Eruptions to draw a card, because you need to be digging with this deck. And the card that almost broke the deck, that's what I really wanted to show off, was this 8-drop Moria. So what you're able to do on 10 Dawn, attach 2 Dawn, put the 5 costs from your trash into your life, then use Moria to bring the little guys from the trash, resolve their abilities, become a 9k leader, probably stick a Sabo blocker, draw 2 cards, hopefully find more Moria, and repeat this several times as your opponent struggles to attack you at 9k. As you're swinging 11k for the turn, 9k Morias, 7k Aces, it becomes pretty dumb pretty quickly. There's some extra slots in here. You can play around with these ratios, but I just wanted to show off the combo that does exist in here. It's really strong. The only thing that it has a hard time is kind of that mid-game point. Like, if a deck is kind of going aggressive on you, it can be kind of awkward to find your point of like, what do I do here? But for the most part, being able to stick this and then have the combo set up already is pretty nutty. This is another one of those decks that are kind of meta dependent. That's why I don't put him higher. Like, he can easily be like up here when he's working well and in certain environments, and then other times he just falls really hard. So he's another kind of Nami-ish deck where it's like either really strong in certain environments where they'll let me do it, and kind of awkward in others. But that's it for the new decks, if I'm not mistaken. And then I just wanted to talk about decks that get way better post EBO1 and what I'm looking forward to most. Obviously is Law. The best red card we've gotten in God knows how long is definitely this Kid and Killer. He goes in every red deck, in my opinion. This card is nuts. It's even like crazier in Law because we get to play him for free off of leader. But his effect is Rush, and then when attacking, if your opponent's at 2 or less life, he gains 2k. So he becomes a 7k Rush for very, very low investment. I would say he's even better than Rush Luffy at this point because you're getting so much stat for one less Don. In Zoro, this can swing 8k, where Luffy would only be able to swing 7. And then he's still cheaper by 1 Don. So like when you start doing like the Don management of it, it's just like this card gets a lot of value very quickly. And in aggressive decks, it's again not the hardest thing to do to get someone to 2 life. The Chopper is a really interesting pick. I just threw him in there. Some builds use him, some builds don't. Yamato will always be a deck. It's a fun deck for 1, and 2, his ability is dumb. Double attack is a dumb ability to have on a leader. So having blockers readily available is really good. Going forward with like any deck you play, like you need to have something, otherwise Yamato will probably kill you. What else is there? Shiraya is another really strong pickup. He copies your opponent's leader stat, so it makes it awkward for your opponent whenever they're attacking. It's just like, well, any Don investment you put in your leader is kind of bad, in my opinion. Like, you have to be really smart of like how you sequence attacks, because Shiraya literally just becomes like, you swing 10k at me, okay, I block with Shiraya, he becomes a 10k, and then I just have to pitch a 1k from hand. So he's a very interesting card. You could play around it, but again, like it can make it awkward, especially if you sequence it correctly. And then finally, the last pickup to the deck is this Mr. 2. He gets a Don when he's played as active, which is strong, which is why I like him better than Ein. Ein is something that we should definitely be playing before we get him. It's mixed. Some people still opt to play Ein with like 2 copies of him. But what I love about this card is anytime your opponent resolves a big beater, he's very similar to Shiraya where he gets to copy those stats. So now I get to have a 7k, an 8k, a 9k, God forbid, a 10 or a 12, and swing it for free just from my 4-drop. Granted, if they don't have it, he kind of just looks funny on your side of the board, but like it's such a strong play. And then again, it's just Don resource management for him. So like you can play around with those ratios again. These are just samples for you guys to look at. And then the other big pickup is from OP-06 is Reiju. She solves our consistency problem. Not solves entirely, like you can still draw kind of dead, but it's really, really helpful. It helps you not get starved. It helps you dig deeper for pieces you need. You don't have to play Queen anymore if you don't want to. You do have slots. Like I said, there are slots you can play around here, especially before we get Killer. So like there are slots to play, but she's such a strong play for us now where we get to draw 2. So long as we have equal or less Don, which is really nice. Some things that got awkward with some of Law's plays where it had to be less specifically, so you couldn't trigger that. But being able to at least be equal Don with them, sometimes you'll be able to trigger where other cards wouldn't be able to. And then again, draw 2. And at 5 cards or less is really easy because we're playing cards from hand off of our leader. So very, 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 very strong effect. Actually, the premier aggro deck of the format in OP-06 plus. So I would kind of like put him here. He goes pretty good into Sokka, in my opinion, but can still lose. Still keeps the same issues into yellow. Yellow is annoying as an aggro deck, but very strong. Like very close to being like a top tier meta deck. And I'll talk about, this was a fun one. I just wanted to throw him in there because he definitely got a lot of love with just very minimal cards. But he gets a new blocker, This blocker essentially Don minuses one to get a Don as active, which means like, oh, aren't I not? I'm just getting the same Don I returned, right? Well, with purple yellow croc, that means I'm actually ramping because he will also get you a Don as active, which is really strong. And on top of that, he gets the same bond clay, which is just Don resource management. Can turn in out of nowhere into an incredibly powerful beater, so I just threw him in there for funsies. And then finally, one of the best events I've seen in a while, for one Don especially. Don -1, if your leader's Baroque works, choose a character, it becomes a target. So anytime your opponent swings with like a little guy after you resolved one of your big beaters, which is very fast, let me tell you, one turn of Miss Wednesday sticking on the board is very scary because that's Don ramp for them that they didn't have before, and it's just like, wow, this 8 cost comes down so much faster. This 9 cost comes down so much faster. So it's really good. And then they instantly become blockers and beaters. So like you can kind of cheat on your blockers or like how many you choose to play in the deck now because like this event turns all your characters into blockers. I threw in some of the just really strong yellow stuff because it's always an option for you. So the ratios are there for you to mess with, but yellow purple croc is an actually interesting build, and I think it's pretty fun. I don't know where I would put him on the tier list. I just said he comes more viable because that event is really, really good. And finally, Uda. No big secret. If you guys follow the game at all, you know that this won the JP like nationals equivalent. So the winner from there is going to be a representative for Japan with Uta. What did it get from EBO1? Literally a 2K and a blocker. A 2K and a blocker is all the deck needed to be really, really consistently powerful. So now I'm able to find them off of my leader, my Nami. And honestly, this isn't a terrible body. Like if you played this off of your Luffy, it's really not the end of the world. For every 3 rested Don, he gets plus 1k, so he can easily swing 8k in the later portions of the game. But what really pushes the deck is like obviously the consistency and then 8 cost Kid. 8 cost Kid has come back in a huge way. It's super good into yellow. Yellow was actually sitting across from this in the final and had no answers to this. Just because I threw 8 cost in our Katakuri build. I threw it as a 1 of because it's something to consider when Uta finally gets these cards because he had no way to deal with this. Swinging, with big moms was not enough to get rid of this card off of the board. You have big blockers, you have cheap blockers, you have plenty of counter, plenty of hand advantage thanks to your leader and Nami, etc. So really good. And then on top of that, at any point in the game, Uda becomes Kid. I know people say that Bonnie's going to be like the best green leader that we've ever had ever. Uda says hi. Uda's literally been on the cusp of being like one of the best decks in the format for a while. Again, just this hand advantage that she creates, being able to go wide really quickly, very easily. You cannot underestimate that. Even things like Sakazuki, which on paper should counter this, like have hard times with her abilities. Just because it's hard to outvalue them. Yes, you can gain the board quickly, but they can easily get it back, and they're still drawing cards every turn, so it's really annoying. So I would definitely throw her up there in like an A+ tier if I had it up here. Her and Law would probably be there. Like Sakazuki, obviously one of the most consistent decks in the game, but like I would definitely throw her up there. And she proved to me, like she proved everyone wrong too. Like there's a lot of players saying like, how did she beat Sakazuki? Well, again, just value. So I would definitely throw them somewhere in like an A+ tier because like they're really good decks. But that's all I have to say. If you've stuck around this long and listened to me talk for as long as I have, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Let me know what you're excited to play in OP-06. I'm more looking forward towards EBO1. I feel like the meta is just more interesting, whereas OP-06 is kind of more the same. But again, if you guys are excited for it, let me know what you're going to play. I'm out of here. I need a glass of water. Peace.